Hey Ben, you know what we're talking about today?
Nope.
You're a liar. Today we're talking about community versus maturity, or fun versus depth.
So to small group or not to small group? That is the question.
That's not even the question.
Instant bromance. I mean, instant bromance.
Hey guys, welcome to Youth Ministry TV, brought to you by the Youth Ministry Blog. I'm David Hanson.
And I'm Ben Fawcett. That's my politician point. I'm Ben
You
Fawcett.
gotta use the thumb.
I'm Ben Fawcett. It's pretty good.
Awesome.
Okay, so real fast, so you can get to know us a little bit better, I'm going to ask David a question. So David, how long have you been in student ministry, and how'd you get into it?
I have been in youth ministry since 2005. After mid-sophomore year at Texas Tech University, guns up, the Lord called me into full-time ministry away from dentistry. And so I originally wanted to be a dentist, but then God called me into full-time ministry my sophomore year. That was in 2005, I think. And so I've been involved in youth ministry to some degree or another since 2005, so 10 years.
10 years.
Started out as the intern, started working my way up.
It's a long time, 10 years.
And now I'm the man.
You are the man. Hey,
What about you?
And you're one of those ballers too that like this is what you want to do. This isn't a stepping stone for you. Like you love students and you love student ministry, and this is what you want to do. I mean, I'm not saying like later on in your life you don't move on to a different phase of ministry because who knows where God's going to call you.
No.
But it's not like you're approaching this saying, "Hey, I'm gonna get into student ministry so that I can get into something else."
Correct. I will do this as long as the Lord calls me to do this, as long as teenagers still respond to the gospel, which they always will. So hopefully it'll be a long time.
Man, so they do exist. Student pastors that want to stay in student ministry do exist. Doug Phillips, great example.
Oh yeah, Josh Griffin, all these people that are on the other youth ministry videos that you can check out on YouTube, DYM, they have a great web show. You should definitely go check it out. So we just look up to them and say, they're awesome.
They are.
Maybe we'll offer a different voice in the field. Who knows?
Yeah. And if you are one of those guys that are enjoying doing student ministries, but you know you're going to go someplace else in the near future, hey, we're not talking anything against you. We don't want you to think we are. We love ministry
judging you.
as a whole. We're just all
not
about multiplying the kingdom. So, God bless you. But it's exciting to meet people and to know that there are people out there that are really invested heavily in student ministry.
Absolutely. So tell me about how you got into youth ministry.
Yes, David. Thank you for asking. Well, you know a good chunk of it, but I will edify you guys. So I got into student ministry about 6 years ago, and I was attending this here church, Life Point, and I had been attending for about 6 months or so, and really decided that this was a community that I needed to invest in and needed to serve in, and so I started looking for service opportunities, and during a flag football event, I met...
I love that that's what got you in flag football.
That is, flag football event. Flag football and chili cook-off, by the way.
There you go.
Delicious chili. I met the previous student pastor, and he asked me if I'd like to volunteer and serve back here, and I was like, yeah, definitely, I'd love to. And just so you know, students was not a draw in any way, shape, or form for me. It was just purely, I just wanted to serve the Lord wherever there was opportunity. And got into that, and then, about 3 years ago, you came along, right?
3 years ago? 3.5 years?
Instant bromance. I mean, instant bromance.
I could go so many different directions with that, but I'll just leave that there.
No.
So our eyes met, and we were like...
It was an instant bromance.
Started running toward each other.
And then, of course, you took the risk and the gamble, and you offered me your associate pastor position, and I was more than excited to take it.
Worst mistake I've ever made.
Worst mistake. And I think it's worth knowing that there was a conversation about me going to a monastery for 30 days and praying.
And I was like, or I've got a better idea. You come hang out with us. I didn't want to distract you from seeking the Lord. I just knew what the Lord had in store for
There
you.
you go. There you go. So that's how the bromance that you see here, that's how all that started.
Wow. All right, so let's get to community versus maturity. Community versus maturity. That's the topic on the
Docket.
docket.
And we're just going to throw this out there right now. This is these are just our views where we're coming from, and we know that the Lord has called and created people all sorts of different ways, right?
Absolutely.
Like you're created differently from us, and that's a good thing we should all celebrate. And you're also called to do things differently than us, and that's a good thing that we should all celebrate. So please don't take offense. This is just our views, and we also know that we're not 100% right. We're just strictly saying this is what we feel God has called for us in our ministry.
Yeah, and so once again, we don't know your context. We don't know what your ministry looks like. We don't know what kind of student audience that you're speaking into, what kind of culture that you have at your church. And so this is simply what we have found to be most beneficial in pointing students toward the gospel in our context here in North Dallas. And so when it comes to community versus maturity, what we have found is that these things are often at odds. Once you focus your ministry purely on community, what suffers is depth. Also, on the flip side of the coin, when you only focus your ministry on depth, what happens is that it tends to drive a lot of students away. Because that's not necessarily a draw for students. That community kind of dwindles when you focus on going pretty deep, heavy deep in the gospel and doctrine and theology and stuff like that. So.
Yeah, and the way our student ministry is set up, just so you guys know, is we have 6th through 12th grade. So, some of you guys might be set up similar and some maybe not. And we don't divide. It's not like I take 6th, 7th, and 8th, and David takes 9th and up. We don't divide in any way, shape, or form because we want one family unity, and we want the older students to help mature the younger students, right? Yeah. And so that does present a little bit more layers into this depth versus community, because how deep can you really go with a 6th grader, a 7th grader, an 8th grader? Like, we're talking attention span, right? We're not doubting the Holy Spirit's supernatural works or any of those type of things. We're just strictly talking about how much can they focus, how much attention do they have, how much life have they experienced, and really have they even gotten to the point where they can introspectively ask themselves those questions of, do I really know who God is, and do I own my own faith, and what does that mean for me in my life? And man, I haven't met a 6th, a 7th, or an 8th grader yet.
Who's that introspective?
You
might have some. If so, start nurturing that now.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. If you have, God has blessed you. That is awesome. That is really cool.
Absolutely.
So that just adds more layers to this, right? Because it's hard, and you've got to kind of really realistically start looking at things and saying, how do we balance? But at the end of the day, we're all called to make disciples. I mean, that's what we're about, is disciple making.
Absolutely. And so one thing that we would ask you to look at, one thing that we do is, and we're trying to contemplate, how do we merge these two? How can we be, to steal a term from Andy Stanley, how do we deep and wide? How can we cast a wide net that calls students into a funnel that drives them deep into the gospel? And so seeking to be wide, how do we offer community to students so that they feel like they have a place they can come, they can be themselves, they can feel part of a family, but then within that family, we're channeling them into a pursuit of Jesus Christ.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll ask you the first question. Can you get both? Can you have both? Can you have both community and maturity? I mean, can you really be that 50-50 mature student ministry that is producing maturity while offering great community?
That is an excellent question. Just looking at our context, once again, our small groups, what we have seen is that some of our small group leaders, okay, I'm talking about my leaders now, I'm not trying to judge you, I'll do that in a minute. In our small groups, what we tend to find is that some of our small groups are very community driven, and those are the ones that are getting larger.
Huge.
They're starting to blow up because the leaders in that group are very social and very good at engaging students. Those aren't necessarily our deep groups. And then we have some groups that have much more maturity-driven leaders. Not to point fingers, but it seems like you're driving students away. But there's also, it's also the fact that these in 10th graders and they're starting to drive and choose whether they want to come to small groups and stuff like that. So there's this natural attrition that we'll talk about in another episode.
But I will admit, there's definitely maybe an accelerated attrition that's going on because groups is no longer for them about coming and hanging out and just eating Cheetos and laughing and talking, but instead now there's actually challenges going on. There's a lot of Bible study and a lot of prayer time going on because when we look at Acts 2:42, right, we see that picture. We want fellowship that's going on. We want breaking of bread. We want that community feeling. But man, we want to devote ourselves to the apostles' teachings and we want to pray. And just to be honest, once you get to the point where you can drive, right? That's you're going to have people that are comparing how they're going to spend their time.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's almost like that transitional thing. You know what I mean? That transitional thing where you don't ever want to be an shallow immature. I'm not saying that at any point in time. You don't ever want to be shallow and immature. But surely there's a transition that should happen, right?
Absolutely. And so one thing that we're looking at and we're re-examining is even how we do Sunday mornings. What does Sunday mornings look at? Because we do a full youth ministry service at 9:15 and 11. The 9:15 is for junior high. The 11 o'clock is for high school. How do those differ? How are we supposed to make those differ? Are we supposed to speak to our junior high students on the same level that we speak to our high school students? And I hate to use the word like dumbed down, but do we pull back the reins a little bit, that sounds better, on the message that we're conveying to students in the earlier service, rather than pushing as we push the later service a little bit deeper and a little bit harder? Do we focus that early service a little more on community and fun and engagement versus our high school service where we just speak to them raw? We just lay down the truth and make them start to contemplate and really inspect their lives and question whether they are pursuing Jesus Christ with our heart, soul, mind, and strength.
Yeah, definitely. And we I'm sure you guys are the same way. We always want the Bible to be the source of truth that we're teaching. And so automatically, the deeper you get into the Bible, the more that's going to drive maturity. But the more you get into the Bible, it's going to decrease your community time or your active social time a little bit, right? It's going to start eating into those things. Because there should be natural conversations that are starting to come about, especially if we're presenting these things in sincerity and honesty and trying to create a culture where it's okay to doubt, right? It's okay to doubt. It's okay to have those questions. It's okay to ask questions that are on your heart and mind and to take time and dig into the Bible. And as you guys are probably starting to find out from us, we don't have like a lot of answers about these things because we're always asking questions ourselves.
And hopefully this is a conversation that we can begin. And so every time I put something out there like, hey, as what we're noticing is that as our students get older, there's a natural attrition. I like put that out there on Twitter at WhyMenBlog, like last week, and someone's like, oh, we're not experiencing that. Our older grades are actually growing, and that's great. We want to hear from you. We want to know what you're doing, what's working, what's helping students grow in the gospel, but at the same time bringing others into the fold. And so what we've noticed is that there are ministries out there that are very community driven. Like these ministries, that's their goal, is to cast a wide net, and they're not always the deepest. But then during the summers, we do this thing called Infused, which is essentially like a seminary for students. And so we say, hey, we're unapologetically going to spend an hour pulling apart God's Word, a whole hour, nonstop, intense the whole way. And we only have about 40 students show up to that. And so that's what we do during the summer instead of small groups. Our small groups, man, there's some groups that have 40 people in them by themselves, but during the summer,
they're massive.
We do Infuse, which is intense. And because it's that intense, we only have like 40 people show up, but we feel confident that we're spending that time with those 40 students well, pushing them deep into the gospel.
Yeah, I think one of the hard things about student ministry, especially when we're talking about these things, is you can really kind of get deceived and distracted by growing number groups and stuff like that, because the goal isn't to have a large student ministry. The goal is to create disciples. So my question, and the question we always ask is, are we equipping them and encouraging them that when they do get to college, that they're not going to be looking to fill the social void in their life, right? Because that leads, a social void leads to going anywhere. But instead, are they going to be looking to fill that church void in their life, right? That faith amplifier in their life, and that will drive them into many of the great college ministries that are out there. And that's what we want. We want our students to not just leave our student ministry and say, like, it was fun in high school, but that's behind me now. But we want them instead to go to college and to continue to pursue Jesus Christ and to continue to grow in that relationship with Jesus Christ and to bring people into a relationship with Jesus Christ at college. And so it's, that's part of that student ministry thing, which is, I think, what makes this question so important and weighty and hard.
Absolutely. So what we're asking you to do is to examine your ministry, look at your junior high students, look at your high school students, and really examine what it is you're trying to accomplish with them. With your junior high students, seek to cast that net as wide as possible, but don't fail to give them meat. With your high school students, understand that our goal and our role is to set them up for a lifetime of success. But at the same time, we don't want to drive them out of our ministries. And so it's time for self-assessment. We'd also love to hear from you. Comment below about how you make sure that you're going both deep and wide in your student ministry. Thanks for joining us in this episode of Youth Ministry TV, and we will see you in episode
Trace.
3.
Three.
See ya.